American Constitution makes it simply impossible for him to be president for a third time. But he also goes on to insist that the Republican Party has a number of great people who could run for the top job in America in 2028. Now, the political temperature in the Indian state of Bihar is clearly on the rise, with Rahul Gandhi taking pot shots at the Prime Minister by claiming that he would even dance for votes if needed. But let's, of course, start with this big story from the United States of America, where for the first time since having returned to the White House, there's been a significant change in the American President Donald Trump's stance and tone on the constitutional term limits on American presidency. Now, while speaking to the reporters on board the Air Force One, Donald Trump conceded that he is not allowed to run again under the Constitution. He's called the term limit as too bad, but added that the Republicans have a lot of great people, hinting that he'll make way for a Republican candidate in 2028. Listen in to what Donald Trump actually said.
It's a very interesting thing. I have the best numbers for any president in many years, any president. And I would say that if you read it, it's pretty clear. I'm not allowed to run. It's too bad. I'm stupid. But we have a lot of great people.
Now, earlier in the week, Donald Trump had also ruled out running as the vice president in 2028, an idea that was floated by some of his supporters to circumvent the legal hurdles for a third term. Now, responding to a question on who could possibly replace him, Donald Trump had hinted at the Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President J.D. Vance.
You said that for 2028, they're very good people.
Well, we have great people. I don't have to get into that, but we have one of them standing right here. We have J.D., obviously. The vice president is great. I think Marco is great. I think, I'm not sure if anybody would run against us.
Now, the Republican leader's remarks have come a day after the U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson said that he saw no way to amend the American Constitution to allow for President Donald Trump a third term at the White House, saying that it would simply take too long. Now, the U.S. Constitution's 22nd Amendment limits the president to 2 terms, and Trump began his second in January this year, but since the beginning of his second term, Trump and his supporters have repeatedly raised the prospect of a 2028 presidential run all over again. Last week, Steve Bannon, a former Trump advisor and a key ideologue of the MAGA movement, had suggested in an interview that there was a plan to keep Donald Trump in the White House. While Trump's latest comments suggest that he's closed on the door for a third term, it still remains to be seen if he stands by his words in the days and months ahead. All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got Mr. Greg Swenson, who is a chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK and an international affairs expert. Mr. Swenson, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, this is a pretty interesting thing that keeps coming up over and over again. Will Donald Trump take a pot shot at a possible third term? The American Constitution clearly limits the number of terms that a person can be president to 2. But do you think there is going to be an attempt to perhaps change the 22nd Amendment of the American Constitution to try and see if Donald Trump can be president for a bit longer?
The simple answer is no. It would be almost impossible to do, even if they wanted to do it. And I don't think the president wants to do it. I think he's just kind of trolling and having fun with the media on this. And I think many of the people that have proposed it don't really understand the hurdles, the challenges of changing the Constitution. It requires, not only does it require 2/3 of both the House and Senate, which would be very challenging in a 50-50 House and an almost 50-50 Senate, a 53-47 Senate, but also it has to be proposed by 2/3 of the states. And then, of course, if the proposal was accepted, if they got 2/3, you would need 3/4 of the states to ratify it. And, right now it's roughly 50-50, or call it 25 Republican states, 25 Democrat states. It's very, very much impossible to pass any constitutional amendment in currently in this kind of 50-50 political setup that we have.
Interesting that you mentioned the legal challenges in trying to pass that amendment. Donald Trump also mentioned something interesting. He said that there are a lot of great people in the Republican Army, and we'll get to that when it comes to that. But do you think he's possibly indicating it is possible success, as he hinted at Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance? Are these two men the potential political successors to Donald Trump?
I would say right now, absolutely yes. They are the ones that are capturing the most attention. They're both doing great jobs in their roles, and I think but it is early. We're still 3 years away, and I would imagine 2 years until they start real serious conversations about it. But I think you wouldn't want to rule out anybody else, especially in the cabinet. For example, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent would be a great president. But right now, I would say the conversation is surely around J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Greg Vincent, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now South Korea has left no stone unturned in welcoming the American President Donald Trump. The Republican leader is on the far leg of his Asia tour. Trump's visit focuses on trade talks and regional outreach. But before the negotiations began, the host nation's president, Lee Jae-myung, presented Donald Trump with a replica gold crown and the country's highest decoration, the Grand Order of the Mugunghwa. Take a look at this moment. All right. Now, trade talks between the United States and South Korea have been ongoing, but no deal has been signed yet. Now, during his visit, both sides say that the negotiations have progressed, especially on matters concerning gradual investments, cooperation on shipbuilding, and the lowering of Trump's tariffs on South Korea's automobile exports.
As for reciprocal tariffs, the 15% reduction agreed upon on July 30th will continue to be applied as is, and tariffs on automobiles and auto parts will also be reduced to 15%.
But for Seoul, there is a key sticking point that still remains. Washington has demanded for direct investment of $350 billion American dollars. But South Korea's leadership says that such a high influx into American economy could actually destabilize their own economy. In Trump's own words, the agreement with South Korea is pretty much finalized, but statements from both sides indicate that few details remain to be ironed out. While power corridors are busy negotiating, the streets of South Korea are witnessing a bit of anger and frustration from workers and trade unions. Anti-Trump protesters from the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions rallied against Trump's visit and tariff negotiations. The many South Koreans have condemned Trump's tariff war, calling his move to be unilateral and coercive.
Trump's policies are destroying the Korean economy and eliminating jobs, and his approach is unilateral and coercive. We believe this undermines our national sovereignty because these policies hurt our economy and employment. Therefore, we are taking a stand against them.
All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got our correspondent Susan Terani, who's joining us live from New York. Susan, this is a very eventful trip that Donald Trump is, of course, having. He is, of course, presented with that replica of the crown of Mugunghwa. All world leaders love those honors. But one key sticking point is the $350 billion investment. Is this a deal breaker for Donald Trump? How intent is he on getting that promise of $350 billion of investments from South Korea into the United States?
So he seemed pretty optimistic, the U.S. side, and to some extent the South Korean media has been pretty optimistic that there is a framework in place already, and it's pretty much finalized in the words of Donald Trump, as you mentioned. However, those key sticking points are how this money is going to be managed and allocated. For example, how is it going to be structured? Is it going to be direct cash versus loans or guarantees? And also, how will the investment committee ultimately be governed? These seem like very bureaucratic issues, but nonetheless, they are those sticking points that the two sides have to come to an understanding with before they have a quote-unquote deal. So a deal may be a euphemism for some kind of framework that they already have in place.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Susan Tehrani, for joining us with those updates then. So the race for New York City's next mayor is getting more interesting by the hour. A new round of polls now show that the progressive frontrunner, Zohran Mamdani, is quite clearly ahead, but there's also some level of skepticism that is being seen in some voters. Mamdani, the 34-year-old state assemblyman from Queens, leads the latest Manhattan Institute poll, with 43% registering their support. Now, former Governor Andrew Cuomo follows him with 28% of the support, and the Republican Curtis Silver is in the third position with 19% of the people backing him. A new poll from Victory Insight shows a striking 39% of the voters believe that Mamdani would be a threat to the city's future. About 26.5% have said that they would consider leaving if he's elected mayor. But despite of that, Mamdani continues to lead in most head-to-head contests, a trend that some analysts are calling is the Mamdani paradox, where a candidate remains on top even as many voters disagree with his policies. Now, Patriot polling survey found 62% of the foreign-born New Yorkers back Mamdani compared to 24% for Cuomo. With more than a third of the city's population born abroad, that bloc gives him a major advantage amongst the American-born voters. However, Cuomo leads 40% to 32%, keeping the race fairly competitive. Now, Mamdani's support comes largely from the younger and the predominantly foreign-born voters who are drawn to his call for expanded social services, rent freezes, and new public investments, and most importantly, to make New York affordable again. Now, these are some of the proposals that have energized the progressives, but this is leaving some of the fence-sitters a bit wary. Now, many voters appear motivated more by trust and change than by detailed policy positions, seeing Zohran Mamdani as someone who can challenge the status quo. If he wins, analysts say that this could mark a big turning point in urban American politics, signaling that the voters are increasingly willing to choose bold change over cautious uncertainty or certainty. Now, in a related development, mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is also facing some kind of scrutiny after a video surfaced showing him blaming Israel for the police violence in New York during a 2023 conference. In the footage, Mamdani spoke about his beginnings in pro-Palestinian activism. He criticized the American support for Israeli military and has accused the state of Israel of practicing quite clearly the policy of apartheid against the Palestinian people. Now, according to media reports, Mamdani has been a consistent critic of Israel and has described the Palestinian cause as a key part of his identity. His remarks have drawn some concern from some Jewish leaders who claim that this position could fuel hostility towards the Jews in America.
For anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. We're in a country where those connections abound, especially in New York City. You have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's popularity numbers are on the decline. But the wheels of fortune could be favouring Reform UK's party and also its leader, the controversial Nigel Farage. And here's what the numbers from the latest Ipsos poll say. When asked about the preferred choice of Prime Minister, about 33% of the Britons now say that they prefer Nigel Farage overtaking his Labour rival. 30% say that they prefer the incumbent Keir Starmer. When it comes to party favourability, Reform UK has emerged at the top, with Labour at the bottom of the list. And here's a quick look at the numbers. 37% of the people favour Farage's Reform UK, followed by 27% of the Britons preferring the Green Party. 22% favour the Conservative Tory Party, and the same percentage also favours the ruling Labour Party. The survey on voter preference for the next election cycle does not paint a good picture for Keir Starmer's Labour. On the contrary, Reform UK has now made substantial gains, putting the party in pole position for elections. 40% of the Britons now prefer to vote for Nigel Farage's party, while only about 28% prefer the ruling Labour, which has fared worse than its predecessor, the Conservative Party, that stands at 29%. The British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's popularity has witnessed a steady and a remarkable decline from the beginning of his term. Much of it is being attributed to social welfare and public spending reforms, which have now triggered widespread backlash against him, even from within the Labour Party.
Our plans, but I can tell the House now that we will build a stronger economy.
Let's now get you some news from India's national capital, New Delhi. There is a political storm that has erupted between the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party and the opposition Aam Aadmi Party over this experiment of cloud seeding to bring about rains to bring down the level of pollution in the air. Now, citing data from the Indian Meteorological Department, the Aam Aadmi Party has said that no rainfall was recorded anywhere in Delhi, despite the second cloud seeding experiment by the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party. They're terming this experiment of cloud seeding to be a big fraud. Now, the Aam Aadmi Party leader, Saurabh Bhardwaj, alleged that the Bharatiya Janata Party had paid contractors for this failed experiment. The former Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal also took a bit of a dig at the cloud seeding experiment. In a post on X, the Aam Aadmi Party Supremo wrote that all engines of this government have failed. This government itself is completely failing. The Delhi Environment Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa has hit back at the Aam Aadmi Party. Sirsa has cited the lack of moisture for postponing further cloud seeding trials and is now accusing the Aam Aadmi Party for trying to obstruct everything that the Bharatiya Janata Party does.
उनका तो काम है, मैं मानता हूं कि वो अपना जो काम कर रहे हैं उनके पास यही पर्पस है। देखिए 10 साल की फेलियर गवर्नमेंट अगर हमारी तारीफें तो नहीं कर सकती। अगर आप ये उम्मीद करते हैं कि वो लोगों ने उनको सत्ता से बाहर कर दिया, ना पानी साफ कर पाए, ना हवा साफ कर पाए, ना क्लाउड सीडिंग का क्लाउड का सील आ पाए, अब वो हमारी तारीफ करेंगे तो ये आपकी गलती है, उनकी गलती नहीं है। और उनको यही करना चाहिए। वो हमें गालियां ही निकाल सकते हैं तो वो निकालेंगे, वो हमारे हर काम में रोकने की कोशिश भी करेंगे, वो हंसेंगे हमारे पे। और जब भी कोई आदमी कामयाब होता है तो सामने वाले उस पर हंसते हैं, तंज कसते हैं, यही कामयाबी की निशानी होती है। तो उनको उनका काम करने देना चाहिए।
Now, so far, the Delhi government has successfully conducted 2 cloud seeding experiments in the national capital. However, the experiments have not triggered any artificial rainfall yet. IIT Kanpur, which has been leading these experiments, has attributed insufficient moisture as one of the key reasons behind the lack of precipitation. Now, according to the institute, rainfall could not be triggered because moisture levels were only at about 15 to 20% in the national capital. It also claimed that cloud seeding experiments had led to a reduction of 6 to 10% of the PM2.5 and PM10 concentrations in the air. Now, political temperature is on the rise in India's election-bound state of Bihar, with just days to go before the first phase of voting. Election campaigning is in full swing. The top leaders Rahul Gandhi and Amit Shah addressed the voters in their respective rallies earlier in the day, and both sides left no stone unturned in pointing fingers at their political rivals. The Congress leader Rahul Gandhi lashed out at India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi while addressing a rally in Bihar's Muzaffarpur. Rahul Gandhi accused the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi of indulging in theatrics for votes, going as far as to say that Narendra Modi will dance for votes if needed. Listen to this.
अगर आप कहोगे नरेंद्र मोदी जी आप ऐसा ड्रामा करो वोट के लिए, वो कर देंगे। जो भी करवाना है करवा लो। मैं कह रहा हूं आप उनको कहो कि देखो भैया हम आपको वोट देंगे, आप स्टेज पे आके नाच लो, वो नाच लेंगे, नाच लेंगे। कह रहा हूं आप कोशिश करो। मोदी जी आइए, स्टेज पे आइए, भाषण मत दीजिए, डांस कर दीजिए, हम आपको वोट देंगे, देखना कर देंगे। जो भी करवाना है करवा लो।
Now, the BJP leaders retaliated to Rahul Gandhi's remarks, accusing the opposition leader of defaming the Indian Prime Minister with his speech.
Rahul Gandhi has crossed every limit and he tried to defame the Prime Minister. He even tried to drag the religious event of Chhath into politics. It is condemnable.
And just about 2 hours away in Bihar's Begusarai, the Bharatiya Janata Party leader and Home Minister Amit Shah fired a series of accusations against the opposition bloc. Now, Amit Shah referred to the opposition as an alliance of thugs, raking up past accusations and instances of corruption with the Congress and the RJD in the state.
लालू जी अपने बेटे को मुख्यमंत्री बनाना चाहते और सोनिया जी अपने बेटे को प्रधानमंत्री बनाना चाहती। मगर मैं लालू जी और सोनिया जी को कहना चाहता हूं कि बिहार में ना सीएम पद खाली है, दिल्ली में ना पीएम पद खाली है। आपके बेटों का नंबर नहीं लगने वाला है।
Now, Bihar goes to polls in 2 phases. Voting for phase 1 will be held on the 6th of November, while phase 2 will be held on the 11th of November. The results of the assembly elections will be declared on the 14th of November. 243 seats are up for grabs in this very crucial state of Bihar. Now, Dutch voters are casting their ballots in a snap election that is being seen as a bit of a litmus test for the strength of the far right, which has made some powerful gains across Europe. Polling stations across the Netherlands opened early today as the voters are making a choice between doubling down on anti-immigration hyper-nationalism of the populist Geert Wilders or a return to the centrist politics. Now, polls suggest that Geert Wilders and his far-right Freedom Party is narrowly on course to repeating his stunning election success from 2 years ago. Now, the election was forced by Geert Wilders and the far-right in June when he unexpectedly toppled the fragile right-wing coalition that was dominated by his party, blaming partners for not supporting his plan to halt all asylum migration. But with half the electorate still undecided, the result is simply too close to call. Opinion polls now show that the once sizable lead of Wilders' Freedom Party has crumbled, and a pack of 3 other parties has closed the gap in recent days.
On the GroenLinks PvdA, on Frans Timmermans, and because I think it's important to vote for a democratic party instead of PVV, and a socialist one. So for a more even society.
Well, it's a liberal party, and I'm a liberal myself for all my life, and so it's more or less the view of the party in basic why I am voting for this party. It's not like a really campaign point. It's more or less a view on the society. In my view, there are 2 liberal parties, D66 and VVD.
Now, all 4 mainstream parties, including the centre-right VVD and the Christian Democrats, have said that they will not enter into a coalition with Geert Wilders and his PVV party, meaning that they would like him to be blocked from power unless he wins in unexpectedly a wide margin. And with that, wrap on this edition of Race to Power. This is Mohammed Saleh signing off. Thanks for watching.